Hello everyone, this is Stephen Ojiri with another Tada Genji video. This video is part of the Lineage series. This is the second video. The previous video was looking at Kusunoki lineage, and this video is going to look at the Yoshitsune line. So the key points here to start the video are Tada Genji, Yoshitsune, Kiichi Hogen, and then the Yoshitsune Ryu. We're going to look at theories, and we're going to look at verified information. So let's start this by looking at something that is historically verified. That is something that is not a theory, it's something that we can look at historical records and everyone agrees that this actually happened. So, the tradition states that Yoshitsune had members of the Tada Genji serving as retainers, and that is verified. So, we're going to use the example of an individual named Tada Yukitsuna, who is a verified retainer of Yoshitsune. So Tada Yukitsuna, unfortunately, has kind of, the story kind of has a bad ending. So Tada Yukitsuna was with Yoshitsune through Ichinotani and Danoura, through all of those epic tales. He's listed among the ranks as a very high-ranking retainer, and the tradition of the Yoshitsune tradition states that Tada Yukitsuna was influential to Yoshitsune, and within the Tada Genji tradition there is this idea that Tada Yukitsuna and other family members, because remember, usually it's not just one single individual. So with Tada Yukitsuna serving Yoshitsune, there would undoubtedly be a couple other family members who would be serving Yukitsuna. So Yukitsuna would be Yoshitsune's retainer, but then Yukitsuna would have some of his own retainers with him, and some of those other retainers were also Tada Genji people as well. So this Tada Genji group is serving under Yoshitsune. And again, through all the famous battles, Ichinotani, Danoura, etc., the entire episode with the cliffs, etc., etc., etc. So, in the Tada Genji tradition, the idea is that Tada Yukitsuna and his group brings this Tada Genji traditions in, and Yoshitsune learns of them as they're working together. But Yukitsuna was considered too close to Yoshitsune when Yoritomo ordered Yoshitsune's execution. And this also, unfortunately, is the point where the Tada estates are taken from Yukitsuna, taken from the Tada Genji group by Yoritomo. So Yoritomo uses the opportunity of Yoshitsune's fall to not only sort of get rid of Yoshitsune, but also to seize the property, the Tada estates, from the Tada line. So this is verified. This is historically verified. Now let's look at something that is not really historically verified. It's very difficult. This one is the more difficult one to examine. This would be the tradition where the tradition states that Yoshitsune studied with an individual named Kiichi Hogen, and that Kiichi Hogen taught Yoshitsune the 6 secret teachings and the art of war, and also things like the Oboshiden. Now, this story is almost impossible to verify. Within the Yoshitsune tradition, it is accepted as true, and there are lots of people throughout history and traditions that have also believed that these transmissions, that this training took place. But unfortunately, there's really no way to prove it took place. It's more of a legend and a belief, and as far as I know, nobody has found any sort of evidence to really lock that this actually happened, as a high probability. With history, you have the claim of something taking place, and then there's the probability that it took place, and probability increases with more with more proof. And the Kiichi Hogen transmission is believed to be true, so it is true culturally. from the viewpoint of people's belief and people acting on the belief, Kiichi Hogen did teach Yoshitsune. But if you wanted to ask, has this been proven to have taken place in history with a high probability, the answer to that is no, it has not. So it is a legend that people believe in, but did it actually happen? There's really no way to verify that. So therefore, you may assume that Yoshitsune is a Genji, so he's Genji Yoshitsune, and you would assume that he would have picked up various Genji traditions through Genji instructors. But that's possible. But the Yoshitsune sources, the documents, the legends, the records, only really consistently mention Tada Genji from the Yukitsuna group and the sort of the material that would have come from Kiichi Hogen. Now, Kiichi Hogen is allegedly part of the line of Genji teachings that come through the Oe family. So the the House of Oe becomes sort of like the Genji tradition instructors. From them, you get this line allegedly to Kiichi Hogen, then from Kiichi Hogen to Yoshitsune. And then as an alternate line, there's the Tada Genji line coming to Yoshitsune. So, and we can with reasonable certainty verify the Tada Genji connection to Yoshitsune, but the Kiichi Hogen one is still relatively unverified. Again, it exists in legend, it exists in lore, and it is believed to be true by the tradition itself, but difficult to actually prove that one. Let me just take a moment to remind the viewers of the idea of Kiichi Hogen teaching Yoshitsune the six secret teachings and the art of war. Just a brief moment to remind you that these Chinese teachings come to Japan during the 700s when there are not samurai. It's just Japan as a rank and file standard army, and these teachings are brought over in the 700s. And then it's later in the 900s and then the 1100s that these teachings are adapted by Genji authors and Genji tacticians and strategists. They are the original Chinese text is kept intact, but there are also there are texts written and there are sort of traditional ideologies created which sort of samuraify or Japanify the concepts in the art of war, the concepts in the six secret teachings, and that those samuraified or those Japanified ideas by these early Genji authors are what go down through the traditions along with the original text. So when we say that Kiichi Hogen teaches Yoshitsune the six secret teachings, it's not just the six secret teachings, but it would be the Chinese six secret teachings, but it would also be the Genjiified version of the six secret teachings. Now let's get to the problem with Yoshitsune tradition. There's no, the biggest problem with it is there's not a clear line of transmission through the years. We know that Yoshitsune is a real person. We know he did real things. We have the records. We know who his retainers were. But the Yoshitsune line doesn't really pop up until the 1600s. Now, we have to examine this a little careful. When I say it pops up, I mean pops up in a way that we can currently historically verify. So first, the Yoshitsune Ryu appears in the 1600s. The teacher of the tradition in the 1600s claims to be the 9th generation, but the documentation prior to him is, like I said, at present not been found by anybody. Now that, again, that doesn't mean that it's not real. It just means that we can't establish it historically because we currently don't have the documentation to corroborate the claim that he was the 9th generation of this tradition. However, point two, Takeda Shingen's Old Guard seems to reference Yoshitsune Ryu occasionally. And this is interesting because we have this reference to the Yoshitsune tradition, or the reference to the Yoshitsune Ryu, not the Ryu exactly, but the tradition of Yoshitsune is seems to it appears referenced by Takeda, by some people related to the Takeda Shingen army, sort of, that group of people. Now remember, the Takeda Shingen forces fell apart, and so there's not, when we say Takeda Shingen's old guard, we mean people that were part of that whole Takeda army before it fell apart. So people who are now, almost all of these people are serving under the Tokugawa, but they would have been the people who would have been under Takeda Shingen. It appeared Yoshitsune tradition is referenced by these individuals, seemingly independent of the Yoshitsune Ryu school of the early 1600s. So it begins to evidence the existence of the tradition prior to the ninth generation individual opening the school. 3, we also have ninjutsu documents, shinobi documents, such as the Bansen Shukai, mentioning Yoshitsune Ryu. And these documents also contain a couple of the Oboshiden charts. Now, in the Bansen Shukai, they refer to the charts as Yoshitsune charts, or charts from the tradition of Yoshitsune, but these charts are from the Oboshiden. What's interesting, though, is these charts are almost certainly pulled from number 4, the Gunpo Jyoshu. So these charts that appear in the Bansen Shukai are pulled from the Gunpo Jyoshu. Now the Gunpo Jyoshu, the claim in the Gunpo Jyoshu is that these charts, these Oboshiden charts, come from the Yoshitsune tradition through an individual named Hattori Ujinobu, who claims to have been a student of the Yoshitsune tradition. So while we cannot clearly see or trace the tradition of Yoshitsune Ryu, or the Yoshitsune tradition, we do see the following. We see claims of Yoshitsune Ryu, and these claims of Yoshitsune Ryu are pre-1600. So while the formal school of Yoshitsune Ryu pops up in the 1600s, we see mention of Yoshitsune. We see the claims, the idea that there's a tradition of Yoshitsune does appear to be popping up before the school appears. We know that the charts that appear in Yoshitsune Ryu, that appear in the Gunpo Jyoshu, that appear in the Bansen Shukai, these charts are from the Oboshiden. These are Oboshiden charts that are popping up as Yoshitsune charts. Lastly, we know that the Kusunoki Ryu students post 1650 cross-trained with Yoshitsune Ryu students and with Shotoku Jingunden students. So post 1650, everything is being studied together. So we have to look prior to 1650, because before 1650 everything is jumbled together, and then pre 1650 is before these things get really intermixed. But also we want to look pre 1650 because we would like to learn the truth of the Yoshitsune line prior to 1650, prior to 1600. So that's kind of like the great mystery is where exactly, how far back could we actually track Yoshitsune Ryu? The belief among the tradition is that we could track it all the way back to Yoshitsune. But as of right now, it appears that it's lingering somewhere in at the turn of the century, but between the 1500s and the 1600s. So somewhere, someday, somebody might find documentations to push it back farther. But this tradition, as far as I'm aware, can really only be proven at the turn of the century. And that is it for this video. As always, these videos are meant to be brief and they are meant to inspire you or to give you a starting off point. The material in this video is copywritten by me, so please do not steal this material. Please do not take it. Please do not copy it. Again, I hope it inspires you. I hope that it sets you off on your own investigations and explorations, but please be respectful.